Hello and welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification Quiz Show, Season 2. I am so happy to welcome back Kerry. Kerry, how have you been going? What is coming up in 2020 for you?
Oh, thanks, MJ. Thanks for having me again. I had such a great time last time.
It was fun. You had a really good one, actually.
Yeah, we had such fun last time, so I decided to come back and spend some more time with you and our viewers out there and talk to them about, certification, which I've done quite a few of those. So
yes, just a bit of a pro over here.
I like giving my tips on how I get through these certifications because they can be a bit tough sometimes, but if you prepare properly and you know what you're talking about and you go into the exam really prepped, you can get through this. So 2020 is really exciting for me this year. I've heard
you got a few things coming up.
Yeah, I do. We have Sydney Summit coming up really soon. So for the people out there, if you haven't registered, go to our website. You will see the link to Sydney Summit. Make sure you register so that you can go because it's great. We have 3 full days of exciting stuff. Partners and customers who are presenting. There's heaps of talks out there. I'm doing a talk myself.
Including yourself.
Yeah. I'm doing a lightning talk about data warehousing, which is my passion, which I love.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. Yeah, there's lots happening this year.
So head down and see Kerry's talk on Redshift, right?
Yay!
Yeah,
it will.
Awesome. All right, shall we jump into episode 2 of season 2? We are back at the Solution Architect Associate level with you. Happy?
Yep.
All right, let's do it.
Let's kick this off.
Question number 1, application performance. Kerry, a web application was previously performing well, but increased popularity has seen its performance worsen. Testing shows that the Amazon RDS database is a processing bottleneck. Most queries are small, read-only, and frequently repeated.
Yep.
What architectural change can improve performance?
Well, this is a good one. This
is
a really good one.
Good start then.
I like good ones. And it's a pretty common architectural pattern. For those of you who are out there, if you don't know, Amazon RDS is one of our managed database services, I should say. And there's a number of engines that you can actually use on Amazon RDS. So if you're using, MySQL or Postgres, MariaDB, you can use Amazon RDS to run that. So if you're currently running one of those engines, even Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, you can run it on RDS, which is great. So it works really well for a lot of our customers. So if we talk specifically about this question, we want to improve performance. Now, the key in the question here is that the queries are small, read-only, and frequently repeated. So the frequently repeated part of it is key in this question. So if we look at some of the answers we've got here, so the first one says change performance mode of Amazon EFS. Well, a couple of things. They've mentioned the database, so it's running on a database server, so EFS is not relevant here. And another thing to point out with EFS is once you've created a file store, you actually can't change it. You would have to recreate it. So change performance mode, you can't do that. So let's rule out number 1. We'll jump down to number 4, enable auto-scaling of the database instance. Well, that's not really relevant here because we're talking about RDS. So auto-scaling of the database instance is not relevant here due to how RDS is designed with the master and the secondary node. We're going to jump to a question later which talks about Aurora where you can do some type of auto-scaling, but it's not relevant here.
Awesome.
Create read replicas in additional regions. Well, it's probably going to add a bit of latency because, essentially if you're going to go to other regions, if you're in Sydney and you're going to go to other regions, it's going to add a bit of latency, which is probably not going to help with performance. So we'll go with number 2 in this case, and the reason for that is because Elasticache, so if you're not familiar with Elasticache as a layer in this type of architecture, great for in-memory as a caching database, so it's an in-memory data store. So the great thing about it is because it's frequently repeated queries, it can actually hit that caching level and push that back up to the user.
Which is exactly what the question's
Which is exactly what the question's about. So you're actually taking the performance bottleneck out by pushing it off to another application, another service like Elasticache, putting that in the middle, which will actually help performance in this type of application.
I love this.
Yeah.
there's just
hope that
nothing
was
to add to
good.
that. I hope we've
So
got
where are we at?
100%
Oh,
on the
yep,
polls.
we got 100%.
We did. All right, should we
Yay.
reveal the answer? I mean, I'm pretty confident listening to you.
I'm
I think I just got lost in what you were saying. Sorry. And the answer for question 1 is
Did I say too
number
much?
2. No, as in I was really like, oh wow, this is really good information. Not lost in the
I
background.
like to explain to everyone why this would be, because I think when you're going through these types of exams, when you've got a time limit, you're under a time of pressure.
absolutely.
So if you don't read the question carefully, so this is a tip of the day. If you don't read the question carefully, you could actually. Am I waiting for this to? Tip
That's
of the
our
week.
great tip of the week screen.
Tip of the week.
Go for it.
If you
Restart.
okay, going back. If you don't read the question carefully, you could end up picking an answer that may look really similar to the right answer.
Absolutely, yeah,
And
exactly.
it's because you haven't read something quite critical in the question. And they do that on purpose because they're trying to make sure that you know the exact answer in this. In this case, it was much more obvious, but in some answers that you get through the certification process, they're not as obvious, especially in the pro exam, the professional exam, they do try to trick you. So just be aware of that.
Awesome. So maybe if we see that later in the show, you can point it out for us as another example.
For sure.
Awesome. Let's move on to question number 2, a bit of S3.
Yay.
You ready? An application is generating a large number of log files in Amazon S3. To reduce costs, you wish to delete these log files after 3 months. How can this be automated?
Cool. Okay. So this automation question, so in S3, the automation part of S3 and being able to automate your files is really to do with the object lifecycle. So we'll skip 1 for now because I'm pretty sure number 1 is correct. But
so we'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. A trick in this one, if we go down to number 4.
Okay.
So
Intelligent
configure
tiering,
intelligent tiering to move logs to Glacier after 30 days and delete the logs. Well, that's a little bit of a distracting answer.
It's actually known as a distractor.
Is it?
So it's a distractor, what we would call answer number 4. So look at you go.
So it's distracting you by looking very similar to an answer that you might see, but it's actually wrong because intelligent tiering will only move between 2 tiers. It'll move between standard and infrequent access. So we know that that's actually not correct.
And it chooses storage class, right? It doesn't actually delete.
No,
anything.
so it's actually going to just move your files. It uses machine learning to move them. It looks at the how many times that object has been accessed, and it's actually deciding, well, if it hasn't been accessed for quite some time, then it will move it. And then if as soon as you access it again, it will move it back to standard access. So it actually saves you cost. It's great to save you cost.
Hence, it's a distractor in this particular question.
It is. It is a distractor. So number 3 is trigger an AWS step function when each log is created, and with a delay of 90 days and a Lambda function. Well, you could do that, but it's a lot to set up. It's a lot more to set up than just using object lifecycle to do it.
And what if you had tens of thousands?
It says that in the question. It's like a large number of log files. Like a large number of log files could be thousands. So you're going to do that every single time to set up a state machine in step functions and then have a Lambda function.
So not very automated. Which is exactly what the question's asking.
It could be automated, but it's not the best. Use of, say, my time as a technical person to set that up when you've got something like object lifecycle, which is number 1, which we're coming to. Apply a metadata expiry timestamp when each, I mean, you could, but then you'd have to use something to actually expire the file and like a Lambda function to like pick that timestamp up and then know that it's past its expiry.
Sure.
Again, not really automated. So I'm going to go with number 1, configure an object lifecycle with an expiry action. That one is automated. We know that it definitely works, and you're relying on a great feature with Amazon S3 that can actually do that for you, which is great.
Awesome. So locking in number 1.
Lock it in, Eddie.
Quick check on the box.
Sorry.
You did that to me last time. I just had a deja vu. Locking in number 1. Once again, Kerry.
Yes.
100% agreeing with you. And of course, it is number 1.
Yay.
All right. Moving on to question number 3. VPC. You ready?
Yep, let's go.
Your company has deployed resources in an Amazon VPC for application development and testing. The company's security policy prohibits this VPC from being connected to the internet.
Great.
Cool, very common problem. What architecture will allow the application to use Amazon SQS? Great question.
Yep. So security policy, no access to the internet. Great, that's a really key piece of information here.
Yep. So we can probably like wipe out number one.
Yes. Even MJ knows. You can wipe out number one. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I didn't mean that.
It's fine. We will wipe out number one.
Thank you. So yes, we won't have an internet gateway because we don't want to have internet connectivity. We'll also rule out number two because an egress-only internet gateway means that it's traffic going out to the internet. So
But it's still a connection to the internet.
It's a connection to the internet. And
on IPv6.
Yes, that's correct. And number one is on IPv4. And the other one that we will also rule out is number 4 because a NAT gateway is actually providing internet connectivity to your VPC. So it's in a public subnet, it's allowing you to connect services out to the internet to possibly get updates, stuff like that. So having a NAT gateway means that you do have a connection through to the internet. So
okay, so we're left with an endpoint.
We're going to go with a VPC endpoint. And the reason for that is a VPC endpoint means that you're connecting internally within our network. So you're connecting your VPC internally using an endpoint to a regional service or a managed service like Amazon SQS or S3, for example, which means you don't actually go out to the internet and come back into SQS. You go directly from your VPC to, in this case, Amazon SQS.
SQS, yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely lock in number 3.
Locking in number 3. This time we have 71% of the poll agreeing with you.
Okay.
Not too bad, not too bad. Let's reveal
see what it
that
is.
answer.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
It's number 3.
Number 3 it is. It's the endpoint. Awesome. All right, let's jump to a bit of EC2. All right, here we go. Your company had an application that is deployed via Amazon EC2 Autoscaling. However, users are complaining that capacity is not keeping up with demand. The issue has been traced to a long setup time for the user data script whenever a new EC2 instance is launched. Bit of a mouthful, this one, Kerry. How can this setup time be reduced?
Okay.
There's the key right there.
Key
Yeah?
thing here. How can the setup time be reduced? So I'm going to immediately rule out number 1. So auto-scaling to stop instances rather than terminating them because that's really not going to do anything. We're stopping instances. It's not really...
Well, autoscale doesn't do that, right?
Yeah, it's not there to provide that service. For those of you on the line who are not familiar with EC2 Autoscaling, it's one of the features of EC2 Autoscaling. And basically what that does is if you would set up a metric to determine whether you need additional instances to handle incoming traffic. So say, for example, you had 2 EC2 instances handling traffic coming in from users, say a website, and then that was funneling traffic through to a web application.
Okay.
And those 2 EC2 instances under a normal load might be operating at, say, 50% CPU. But all of a sudden, your website becomes super popular overnight. There's just heaps of people coming.
Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great. And essentially, you have all this traffic coming in and the 2 EC2 instances can't handle that traffic.
Yep.
So you would use a feature like EC2 Autoscaling to add instances to handle that incoming traffic for the period of time that you have this increased load.
Awesome.
And what often happens is, with I've come from a background where we were running technology on premises, and doing something like this was almost impossible because you had your resources, you had your hardware, and whatever was coming into it was what you had capacity for. And so the great thing about EC2 Autoscaling is that it can add that hardware, it can add that resource for your application and what we call do this auto scaling automatically for you. Because generally if it's going to happen at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
When no one's around and some administrator gets this phone call and says, oh, we should go and can access our website. So auto scaling is a great feature. if you have the opportunity or you can use it with your application, you should definitely use it. The other thing that it does conversely is also it removes instances when you don't actually need them. So you set up these like metrics where it will add instances and then remove them when you don't need them. So that's what autoscaling is in a nutshell. So back to the question. Sorry, I digress.
No, not at all. That was perfect.
Okay, so we've ruled out number one. We said we're not going to stop instances. That's not. We'll jump down to number 4. Use scheduled scaling. So scheduled scaling is good, and you can do scheduled scaling. The thing with it is, what if you didn't anticipate the scaling correctly? So if you use scheduled scaling, it means it's like maybe a time-based scaling. Maybe you think that your traffic is going to grow at a certain period in time or time of the day. And if you didn't get your scheduled scaling right, you could be scaling unnecessarily.
It's not dynamic. It's going to be exactly as you said it.
So you could get your actual scaling policies wrong there. So we'll rule out number 4.
The other thing, to go back to your tip of the day, Kerry, is that's specifically talking about peaks, whereas here we're talking about setup time reduction. So that kind of goes back to...
Correct.
Sounds great. Make sure you read the question.
Same with number 3, actually, because that's also in relation to the same thing.
Step scaling.
It's like step scaling, making sure that they're there before they're required. We're more talking about setup time, as you said, with the question is how do we reduce that? So at this point in time, I am going to lock in number 2, which is around launching instances from a pre-configured AMI. So a pre-configured AMI is an Amazon machine image. So you're basically wrapping your user data script and everything that you need to launch an instance into this image, into this package, and you're allowing auto-scaling to use that image to actually push the actual auto-scaling to happen with that pre-configured image.
Awesome.
That's like number 2.
I feel like these questions are just too easy for you.
I talk about this stuff every day. I talk about this stuff to customers every day. So this stuff is really great for me. I really like to talk about this with our customers because I know it can make their lives easier. You know,
you can tell, like you can feel the passion. That's what I meant before. Like I'm lost in what you're saying because you're so passionate about it. I love it. Real quick before we reveal the answer, we have Reese start saying hi, Kerry. Hi, MJ. Hey, Reese. How are you? Let's reveal question number 4, and the answer is, of course, number 2.
Very
well done, Kerry. Let's move on to question number 5. Oh, okay, cool. I am. I'm having so many deja vus. I feel like a couple of these have evolved from our last show that you did.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into this one. You are architecting an application that needs access to a DynamoDB database. The database is managed by a different team in your company, so it is located in a different AWS account.
Okay.
Got it.
Yep.
What is the most secure way for the application to access the database?
Yep. Okay. So most secure way.
Lots to digest in that one. Yeah, but that's exactly right. Most secure way.
Different AWS account and most secure way is the things that we're looking at here. So if we talk about most secure way, one of the great things about IAM is having IAM roles. So an IAM role is something where, as a user, you can assume that role. So we won't reveal the answer. I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is here, but let's talk about the other ones first.
I haven't even looked at them.
And I hadn't even read the answers, but I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is now.
Okay. So do I, from what you just said. Okay, good.
So let's talk about the first one. Create an IAM user in the other account, generate an access key and a secret key, then provide them to the application. No.
Not the most secure.
No, not the most secure, given that the access key and secret key...
kind of like a username and password.
Yes,
right?
exactly. And you could probably do that in like Secrets Manager and store that in Secrets Manager.
Sure, we had that last week actually with Chris.
Yeah, and then you can actually get that from Secrets Manager to pass it through to Dynamo, but it's not, definitely providing it directly to the user or the application is just not the best way because it means that the credentials are exposed.
Yep. Let's move on from that one.
Activate private sharing on DynamoDB table and enter the account ID used by the application. Is that a thing?
I don't think private sharing exists.
No, I don't think so. I've never heard of that.
Okay, good. We agree.
And then the last one is configure a web identity federation to allow single sign-on access between the accounts. You don't really need to do that.
No.
You can assume a role between accounts, which would make it definitely very secure, because you're not actually passing any credentials or any of that sort of information.
Yep.
And so I'm actually going to go with number 2, create an IAM role in the other account and permit the application's existing IAM user to assume that role. Because what that means is the IAM role then gives them permission to access the DynamoDB table. And by assuming that role, we're not passing any credentials through. It's still giving them the permission that they need to do the application permission to do what it needs to do without passing any credentials.
Awesome. So kind of like adding it to the current ID rather than giving them.
So you're you're adding a policy that says this user can access, and you'll do a least privilege thing. So you would say within that policy, you would say this user can access maybe read only or write to DynamoDB, but everything else it can't do, right?
Perfect.
So that means that essentially it can only access DynamoDB as a service, but it's not actually accessing anything else.
Perfect. Locking in number 2. Everyone locked it in pretty much after your very first sentence response to the question.
I kind of told everyone the answer.
No, but that's awesome because again, you're showing how you can just pretty much draw the answer from the question immediately. So thank you for that. Assuming it's right. Oh. And of course it is. Awesome. All right. Question number 6. Moving back to databases. Okay.
I like databases.
You do. All right. An application is storing data in an Amazon Aurora database. Awesome. So we can talk about Aurora. Mm-hmm. During daily peak periods, database read performance has been inadequate. Like my speech today. I have no idea. What would be the most cost-effective way to improve database performance during peak periods?
So, most cost-effective way to improve database performance. So in this case, we said that, if you remember my tip of the week was basically you need to ensure that you read the question. So in this case, the key point is most cost-effective way to improve database performance during peak loads. Most cost-effective. And can I tell you that in the pro exam, in the professional exam, that is predominantly the questions. It'll be what's most cost-effective, and it will give you all the options. It'll say, like, if it was storage, for example, it'll say S3 EBS instance store. It'll say give you all the options, and the answers will pretty much read the same but with a different service. And the question will be what's most cost effective. So
they could all be good scenarios, really good solutions.
Exactly.
But
exactly. But you need to read the question. So make sure you read the question. If we haven't said that 5 times already. Okay, so let's go down.
Just so you know, let's mix it up a bit. Everyone's jumped straight to number 4. So let's go through 1 to 3 first.
Okay, cool.
Yeah?
Okay. Change the instance class of the database to R5 family. Okay. Well, we could do that.
Yep.
But that's vertical scaling, what we call vertical scaling. So you basically, actually, I don't even know if it's vertical scaling because we don't know what the original database was.
Oh, fair. Yep.
So if you're changing the instance class, you're just adding potentially more resource to it. So you could be adding more memory, more CPU, but you're not actually necessarily fixing the problem, because the performance during peak periods means that maybe it's okay during peak performance, during the peak periods, and the performance is great, but during normalized periods, you might be overpaying. You might actually
You've got this massive database.
Yeah, you got this huge database that doesn't
not running.
Yeah, for like 10 minutes of the day that you only need to have this extra performance available or resources available to you. So
number 1.
We're going to rule out number 1. Distribute the database nodes over multiple availability zones. Well,
kind of the same problem.
It's kind of the same thing, but if you know how Amazon Aurora works, the storage is actually replicated across the multiple availability zones anyway for you. So because it's a managed service, it's an Amazon derived database service that we built ourselves from the ground up. And essentially the data is actually already stored across multiple availability zones for you. And the way it's designed is it actually replicates those your data across the different availability zones for redundancy. So that's why it's highly available. So number 2, we'll definitely rule that one out because you're not managing the database nodes anyway in Aurora.
Yep. Max connections.
Increase the maximum connections database parameter. Well, you could do that, but that's not going to actually improve. It might improve if maximum connections, if database connections is a problem, it might improve it temporarily, but it's not necessarily a long-term fix. Pardon me. And the other thing with connections is it also affects the memory that you're using on a database node. So there's other things you would need to do there, and it's not the most cost-effective way. It's not necessarily going to fix your problem. It could fix part of the issue, but not necessarily fix the whole problem.
Okay.
So it's something you can tune in the database, but it's not going to fix the performance. So I'm definitely going to go with number 4. Use Aurora Autoscaling to scale the number of Aurora replicas. And the thing about that is it's going to scale for you, and it's automated. So a bit like the EC2 Autoscaling that we talked about.
Oh yeah, okay.
It means that it will take care of that for you, as opposed to you having to manually scale it or try to do one of these other tuning of your database to fix the problem. It will automatically scale for you. So
you asked the audience on this one, and you're going with the audience.
Okay. What did the audience say?
Number 4. They chose it straight up. Yeah. All right.
So what did we come to? Number 4?
Number
Are we at
4?
number 4?
Yep.
Oh, you're going to reveal the answer.
You ready?
Yeah.
Do you want to change your answer? Do you want to go against the audience?
No.
Locking in number 4, and of course it is number 4. All right. I think we've got time for one more question.
Like 100%?
Yeah. Of course, as if there was any doubt.
Just checking.
I need to have a word with producer John, and next time you're on, we got to ramp this up for you a bit, I feel. It was just too easy.
You made it too easy for me.
All right,
it's all because we have this beautiful, I should say, Eiffel Tower in the background. It's what it is.
It's like we're there.
Yeah.
You always wanted to go.
I wanted to go. I've
Ta-da.
always wanted to go to Paris.
Just thought I'd bring you here.
Now I'm right here. It's right here.
We are right here.
We
We knew we'd get here. All right, let's jump to probably the last question of the day.
Oh,
We're going to
okay,
do
cool.
a bit of
I've been having
CloudFront.
so much fun.
I know. I just noticed the times.
Oh. Sorry.
Okay, so your
Get
company
back to it. Come on.
uses Amazon
Come on,
CloudFront with Amazon S3 as the origin.
Okay. Yep.
Marketing wants to implement A/B testing of the website, where 20% of users see an alternative version of the website. How can this be implemented without adding logic to the web pages?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so what are we talking here? We're talking about CloudFront. We're talking about S3. So for people who are not familiar with Amazon S3, you actually can use that as a website.
Okay.
So rather than having to spin up EC2 instances and build your own web page and have that, you can actually use Amazon S3 to do that. And it can deliver both static and dynamic content, which is great. And you're putting CloudFront in front of it. CloudFront is our content delivery network. So I was going to say CDN, but it's actually content delivery network. So what CloudFront does is it's about user experience. So you want to be sure that your users, when they hit your website, can get a page load. And CloudFront can help with that because it's actually located in our, what we call our POPs, our points of presence, or our edge locations. And we have over 200 of them around the world, globally distributed. So the great thing about that is, if, for example, you were a user in Perth, for example, let's use Perth as an example, our region's located in Sydney, but we actually have a point of presence or an edge location in Perth. So your user will actually, if they were to hit your website, which is in S3, they will actually hit the CloudFront distribution, which is in Perth.
Get their data returned quicker.
Yeah, and then if there's any, if the data or the website has been cached at CloudFront, it will actually serve it directly from CloudFront, from our content delivery network. So it's a great user experience.
Awesome.
And we basically want customers to have, or your users to have, a great user experience, because part of that is that if they have a great user experience, they're going to return to your website. So that's the whole point of it.
Awesome.
So
So
back
what
to
are
the
we
question.
looking for in this
We're
one?
running out of time. I have to be
we are.
really quick. Sorry. I like to explain everything.
No, it's awesome.
So how can this be implemented without adding any logic? Okay, so if we go to number 1 straight away,
It's
geo
not
restrictions
asking
not
us
going to.
to be place specific, so we can wipe that one out.
We can write that out. If we say number 4, it's not possible since A/B testing can only be, well, that's not true. So it's definitely possible. We'll look at 2 and 3. 2 is to serve up every 5th page from an alternative. No, that's probably not a good idea. So I'm actually going to lock in 3. And the reason for that is Lambda at edge. So our Lambda service is what we call in an edge location, like I was talking about before.
Yep.
It can actually process the user traffic and can segregate those users so that it's actually only serving up to the users that.
So add an intelligence. At
the edge. So that's why I'm saying Lambda at
Locking
edge.
in number 3. We almost got there. 80% agreeing with you. Let's reveal this last answer, Kerry.
Yep.
Of course, it's Lambda at edge. Number 3. Kerry, thank you so much for being with me again.
No worries.
On season 2.
I had so much fun.
I can't wait to have you back, but we need to get more difficult questions. Okay. I've made a note of that. We will see you next week for episode 3 of season 2, and don't forget to check Kerry out at this year's AWS Sydney Summit. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.